So we now have a more bug-free, better performing and more stable version of Fallout New Vegas. We've overhauled the user interface and added the awesome mod configuration menu. But now it's time to do something I know a lot of people enjoy doing: making the game look better.
Jingle jangle, and they sing, oh, ain't you glad you're single? Jingle jangle, and that's...
Fallout New Vegas is getting on a little bit. It's a bit old, but even when it first came out it was not the best looking game, so it's fair to say there are many ways in which you can improve the graphics. One of those ways is the lighting, and specifically I'm talking about that awful orange tint that seems to infect everything. When you look at the game, when you're outside, you kind of feel like you've got orange sunglasses on. Now some people enjoy that look, they feel it gives the game a warm and sandy feel, and you know what, if it works for you that is fine, you should keep it as it is. But a lot of people, well, they don't like it quite so much, and removing the orange tint is a reasonably popular thing. And we are going to install one such mod, a mod called Clarity and Orange Tint Remover. Now this is a fairly simple and lightweight mod that does more or less what it says. It removes that tint. However, there are quite a few other mods out there that will do the same, but they tend to do slightly more. Perhaps they'll tweak the light levels, perhaps they'll change the textures of the clouds, perhaps they'll even tweak the weather patterns in the game. This mod is very lightweight, and I think it's a good place to start. It's a good mod for you to try out, and if you want to experiment, if you want to try something a little more dramatic or impressive, you can always do that at a later date. Installing this mod is relatively simple. Go along to the Nexus mods page, go to the Files tab, and hit the Mod Manager download on the main file. Once it's downloaded, hit Install, wait for it to finish, hit Enable. It will then deploy, and it's done. Now you just start up the game and see if it's working. And there is Goodsprings without the orange tint, with a beautiful blue sky. So the mod has installed successfully. Clarity doesn't just remove the orange tint you see during the day, it actually removes that slight blue tint you get at night. And you may have noticed when we visited the file section that under the main files there were 3 different main files. And the third one is Clarity Vanilla Nights. That is essentially the same mod, replacing the orange tint during the day, but leaving the vanilla nights with that slight blue tint. So if you prefer that, you could have chosen this option. You can also see there is another file called Clarity Dark Nights, 50% darker nights, and this is a version of the mod that actually makes the nights a little darker. Not too dark, just dark enough so you feel visibility has been reduced just slightly, and it does make the game a little more atmospheric. We're going to install that one now just to show you the difference, and again you do that by hitting the Mod Manager download button and downloading it to Vortex. Once it's downloaded, I'm going to dismiss the notification for now. The thing is, both of these mods do the same thing during the day, but slightly different things at night. And you only want one of them working. They don't sort of work together. You need one of them, not the other. So I'm going to disable the first mod I installed, and then I'm going to install the Dark Knight version. It's not that difficult. Enable it and then start up the game to check it out. And there we are, slightly darker, slightly more atmospheric nights, so the mod is working properly. Now, clarity is not the only weather and lighting mod out there that will give you some darker night options. Mods such as Nevada Skies really do make nights kind of dark and terrifying, and there are a lot of other options. There are standalone darker nights mods such as Nights Are Darker Ultimate Edition that will just make the nights darker and leave the days untouched. So if all you're actually looking for is a scarier, darker night, you could use a mod like that instead. Now, you might wonder if you could use one mod for the days and then a darker nights mod for the nights, put one on top of the other, and the answer is you sort of can. Technically you can do that, but the results may not be perfect. They may be reasonable, you may initially think this looks okay, but I can tell you very often the changes to the nights, the darker nights, will have an effect on the days from the other mod. They may well reset the changes made by that mod, so you may lose some of the effect that you were supposed to get. I would generally at this point recommend against doing that. You can experiment if you want, but I would say right now don't do that unless there is a compatibility patch for the two specific mods in question. We will talk about compatibility patches another time. Without mods, the textures in Fallout New Vegas are terrible. The unmodded, or vanilla game as we call it, really does not look good if you get close to objects, because you can see how low resolution the textures are. They lack detail. Luckily, there are a lot of mods out there that can fix this, including the most popular texture mod, NMC's Texture Pack. This mod improves the textures for a lot of things in game. Roads, trees, landscape, vehicles, and a bunch of other stuff. It really does replace an awful lot, and I honestly can barely imagine playing the game without it. However, one thing you should know about adding texture mods to Fallout New Vegas is there is a limit to how much you can push it. Even if you have the best computer out there, the game itself has some limitations. It can handle quite a few texture mods, but the more you add, the more strain you're going to put on your system, so you need to be sensible. NMC's texture pack comes in 3 different sizes: small, medium and large. And the large texture pack is of course the highest quality. The textures look a lot better even when you get very close to objects. Of course, this does cause more of a stress on your system. It will use more video RAM, more RAM in general, and whilst a new gaming machine will probably be able to run the large textures without much trouble, if you're going to keep adding mods to your game, it is going to come at a price eventually, so you do want to consider dropping down to perhaps the medium, which does relieve the stress a little, or even the small. Believe it or not, the small doesn't put any more strain on my system than the vanilla game. The textures seem to be of a similar size, maybe occasionally a little larger. But they are a massive step up in quality. You can see the difference if you get close to objects. In fact, you can see the difference even quite far from objects. The small pack is definitely worth using. The medium and the large, that's really going to depend on you. If you do notice the low quality textures quite a lot when you pass by objects, maybe you want to push up to the medium. And if you're the sort of person who just likes to stare at things, you know, go right up to a door and just stare at it, maybe you will need the large textures. But just be warned, it does come at a price. I'm going to recommend you go with the small textures for now. That is what I'm going to install. Although I will point out, this mod is one that you can install and uninstall at any point, and it will have no side effects on your save game. So you could actually try the large one and drop down to the medium or the small at any stage if you think you need to. I'm going to start by installing the smallest of the NMC's texture packs, and you do that by going to the Nexus mod page. Of course, the links will be down below. clicking on the file section and then scrolling down the main files until you find one named NMC's Texture NV Small Pack single file for NMM. Now it's the small pack, but it's still 858.1 megabytes, so it's the biggest mod we've downloaded in this series. It will take a while. Click on Mod Manager Download and then just wait for Vortex to finish downloading. And eventually, once the file has finished downloading, hit the install button, and it will take a little longer to install now because there are a lot more files. And once it's done, hit enable. Now there's an unresolved file conflict, and if you go along to the NMC's Textures mod and click on the red lightning icon, you'll find out that conflict is with WRP, and it's a single distant terrain texture file. Now Vortex is suggesting you load NMC before the WRP patch, and I've checked the two files in question and I concur, so we're going to leave this as before. Hit save and then hit deploy. Now at the time of making this video there is an update file for NMCs, so you need to check and see if that is still the case. If there is, you're going to need to download that as well, no matter which size of the texture pack you're using. Once downloaded, click install, and once that's done, enable, and you should expect some inevitable file conflict. Go along to the patch itself, click the red lightning icon and make sure it loads after the main file. There are 15 updated files there. Then hit save, deploy, and now go into game and check to see if it's all working. And once in game, I can immediately see the improvement in the textures. A lot better even when I run right up to objects and stare at them. To install the medium and large versions of NMC's texture pack, the process is more or less identical except for the files you download. If I go to the file section, instead of downloading the single file for the small pack, if you want the medium pack, you need to download two files. NMC's Textures NV Medium Pack Part 1 of 2 for NMM and Part 2 of 2 for NMM. Make sure you get both of the medium files. They will take a little while to download. Once they've downloaded, install them both, enable them both once they're installed, and resolve the conflict the exact same way. For the large pack, it's pretty much the same thing, only this time download 3 files, part 1 of 3 for the large pack for installing using Nexus Mod Manager, part 2 of 3, part 3 of 3, install all 3 files, enable all 3 files, resolve the conflict the same way. Don't forget to check the update file if there is one, install that if there is, and you're done. Another popular texture pack is Ojo Bueno and its baby brother Poco Bueno. This mod does contain a lot of textures, although not as many as NMC. NMC's got approximately 5,000 textures. Ojo Bueno has about a tenth of that. It's still a lot of textures, and it does include some textures not covered by NMC. That is going to be important. I'll talk about that in a little while. Like NMC's texture pack, Ojo Bueno comes in 3 different versions, the Ultra, the High and Performance versions. And whilst the mod contains less textures than NMC's, its textures are actually generally a lot larger. The Ultra and High versions have textures up to 4K. Even the Performance version has textures up to 2K. This, of course, could be an issue for performance and stability on weaker systems. Luckily, there's also Poco Bueno, which is all of the Ojo Bueno textures resized and optimized so that they will work better on weaker systems or give better performance for stronger systems. The textures in that mod are never larger than 2K, and most of them are 1K or lower. And they are still generally a massive improvement over the vanilla similar textures when it comes to just how they look. Again, I am going to suggest that if you want to use this mod, you try the different versions and decide which one is for you. Don't go for the highest quality version if you really don't need it. Check in game to see which one you need. For that reason, I'm going to install Poco Bueno in this video, but the installation process is pretty much identical for both mods with one small difference. Go along to the Poco Bueno Nexus page, go to the files and Mod Manager download button, just click there and let it download. Again, it's a large file, it probably will take some time. Once downloaded, click install, then enable, and there is once again an unresolved file conflict. Go along to Poco Bueno Texture Pack V5, the red lightning icon, and it's not going to surprise you to find it's conflicting with the same file in the unofficial patch. Once again, load before that and hit save, deploy, and start up the game and check everything is okay. And once in game I can see it's installed correctly. I mentioned a small difference between Ojo Bueno and Poco Bueno when it came to installation, and that is if you've gone with Ojo Bueno and you go to plugins, you will see a new plugin called Nuka-Cola Ojo.esp. That essentially adds a Nuka-Cola machine to Goodsprings. If you don't want that, you can just click on the enabled button to disable it and that will just be completely ignored. Now, one question you are probably asking, and the reason I'm showing you how to install two texture packs, is can you use both NMC and Ojo Bueno or Poco Bueno? And the answer is yes, you can, and there are some reasons to do so. For example, if you check out this image, you can see that NMC's texture pack has replaced the counter. The counter has got a few more details and looks a little nicer, but the actual cash register has not changed. However, with Poco Bueno or Ojo Bueno, the cash register has improved, but the counter has not. With both mods, you get both improvements. And it really is very easy to do. You just download, install and enable Poco Bueno, and then you download, install and enable NMC's texture, the small pack, for example, if you want the higher performance options. Or the other way around. It doesn't matter which order you install them in. Once you've enabled both of them, what will happen is a little red lightning icon will appear next to both. Click on that red lightning icon near the Poco Bueno texture pack, for example, and you can see that it conflicts with NMC's texture small pack 327 times. You can actually look at all the files if you so wish. It will also conflict with the patch if you have that installed. Now, the question is, should you load Poco before or after NMC? Well, in the case of the cash register and the counter, it doesn't actually matter. You could pick before or after and it will look the same. But this is not true for a lot of scenarios. For example, in this scene, NMC has replaced the texture for the toolbox and for the desk. It's also replaced the texture for the fire hose cabinet, but it's not improved the texture for the cash register, the radio or the desk fan. Look at the same scene with Ojo Bueno installed and you can see it has retextured all four major items on the desk and the fire hose cabinet, but not the desk. So what happens if I load Poco Bueno texture pack after NMC's? Well, as you can see, all four major objects on the desk, the toolbox, the radio, the cash register and the desk fan, have been retextured by Ojo Bueno along with the fire hose cabinet, but the desk has been retextured by NMC. However, if you load Poco Bueno before NMC or load NMC after Poco Bueno, you can see that the radio, the cash register and the fan have been retextured by Ojo Bueno. However, now the fire hose case, the toolbox, along with the desk have been retextured by NMC. So it does matter which you choose, but there is no right answer. It really is up to you. You make your decision and then you choose one. Make sure you choose the same for the patch if you are using the patch, and hit save. Hit deploy, and now you have both mods working. Okay, what I'm about to tell you now is not something I recommend you play around with, but I want you to know because it could be something that's important later on. You can actually fine-tune which files win conflicts by going along to the lightning icon, and where it lists the files, click on that link and scrolling all the way down to the bottom and then clicking this edit individual files button. You can now see that these are all of the textures that Poco Bueno has got, and they're overriding all of the NMC textures. However, if I want, I can select any of these and change it to favour NMC instead. So for example, if I liked Poco Bueno's textures except for perhaps the truck, I believe truck7.dds is the texture for the truck outside Goodsprings, I could change that to the NMC texture. This will give me more or less all of the Poco Bueno textures except this one. Hit deploy. And once in game you can see I've got the texture from the NMC texture pack on the truck. And there you can see Ojo Bueno on the pool table. As I said, I wouldn't necessarily recommend you start playing around with that sort of functionality until you are very comfortable with modding. It's just good to know that you can do it. Now, if you've installed either of the mods that I've shown you so far, you've already got a lot of texture replacers. However, you've only just scratched the surface. There are plenty of other areas that you can improve the textures in. An example of that is weapons. The vanilla weapons are pretty horrible, to be honest. And of course, luckily there is a mod that will fix that for you, one of the most popular mods for Fallout New Vegas, and that is the Weapon Retexture project. And for many people it's probably more important to replace the appalling vanilla weapon textures than textures for the roads, the landscape and other objects, because of course you do spend rather a lot of time in New Vegas holding a weapon right in front of your face. So let's install this mod, and of course we start by going to the Nexus mods page. Now I've already mentioned in this series that it is important to read the information on the front page for each and every mod that you install. But one area you should pay especially careful attention to are the requirements. If you go along to the requirements on the page and click the arrow, it will tell you all of the things that you need to be able to run this mod. And as you can see, for the Weapon Retexture project, you do need 3 of the official DLC and another mod, the Weapon Mesh Improvement mod. There are also a list of mods that require this mod, but that's not really important right now. We need to make sure that we have the Weapon Mesh Improvement mod installed before we install this mod. We also need to make sure we have these DLCs, but I'm assuming you are using the Ultimate Edition of New Vegas. So let's look at the Weapon Mesh Improvement mod by right-clicking and opening in a new tab. Now, fairly obviously, this is a mod that improves and actually fixes some problems with the weapon meshes. It will improve the way the weapons look, it will improve animations and a number of other things. Again, read the front page, find out everything you need to know and pay special attention to the requirements. Once again, lots of the DLC are required, but no other mods are required. These are all mods that require this one, and again, we can sort of ignore that for now. So let's start by installing the Weapon Mesh Improvement mod by going along to the File section and hitting Mod Manager Download as usual and letting Vortex download it. Once downloaded, hit Install, then Enable, and if you've been installing the recommended mods I've suggested, you will see a conflict. Go along to Weapon Mesh Improvement mod, click on the red lightning icon, and you can see that it's conflicting with Yukichigai Unofficial Patch. 45 files. You're going to want to load this after, as Vortex suggests. Hit Save, and then Deploy. Now, before we install the Weapon Retexture project, again, just start the game up and check that nothing has broken, check there are no problems, and indeed check the weapons out anyway. There are some small improvements you may even be able to see already. Assuming there are no problems, go back to the Weapon Retexture project page, go to the Files tabs, and you'll want to download the main file, but this time you will also want this hotfix. In fact, whenever you go to a mod and download it, you probably want to pay careful attention to which files are available, especially update files. It's quite common to find hotfixes for mods, and you will almost certainly want those. There are sometimes some optional files. In this particular case, it's a patch for a mod we do not intend to install. So, I want the main file. I'm going to click Mod Manager Download, and once that starts downloading, I'm also going to click on the hotfix, Mod Manager Download button again, and once they've downloaded, I'm going to click one more to show them both. We're going to start by installing the main file. Hit Install, then Enable, and you will get conflicts, this time with two mods. So go along to Weapon Retexture Project, click on the red lightning icon, and it's now conflicting with Weapon Mesh Improvement mod and the unofficial patch. You want this to load after both of these. Hit Save. Now, and deploy. Actually, you probably don't need to deploy because before we check in game, we are going to install the hotfix as well. So install that, enable, and now it will conflict with the main file. Go along to the hotfix, click on the red lightning icon, and it's only one file that it's conflicting with, and you'll load this after. Hit Save, deploy, and then go and check out the new textures in game. And now I have much better looking weapons. The mod has been installed, well, the mods have been installed successfully, and I have a lot less ugly when it comes to firepower. I have to say, this is one of the more essential mods for me. I really do. Well, I do not like the vanilla textures. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all we have time for in this video. And it's not because there aren't many more great texture mods out there. There are. For example, the Amidian-born NV Book of Water that replaces armor textures and the textures of a lot of the creatures you're going to be meeting, or the Wasteland clothing high-res retexture, which obviously improves the clothing and makes that look a lot nicer. But I believe now you have the knowledge required to install these mods and indeed evaluate them and decide whether or not you should. So I'm going to leave it there. But I will be back in part 4 with some mods that actually start to change the gameplay. I hope you can join me for that video, and I look forward to seeing you there if you do. And until then, remember, as always, have fun.
Ain't you glad you're single?
Jingle jangle,
And that song ain't so very far from wrong.